going to be going over today. So the first is how firms educate users in real time and in context, like I just mentioned. The next is how Guardian connects users directly to Pinnacle learning resources. Again, right within Revit, right in that moment. And lastly here is how Guardian provides the insights to validate that the training is actually working. So that's something that I've always come across is, again, providing, it seems like endless amounts of training resources, but how do you know it's actually being effective? And so we'll demonstrate how that works within Guardian. All right, a little bit about Guardian. So as I mentioned earlier, many of you, this is probably the first time you've even heard of Guardian. So basically, Guardian is a Revit add-in. Now, Guardian does a lot of functionalities that really supplements the work of a BIM manager, the traditional BIM manager. And so we do this in many different ways. One is it protects your work. So it ensures the work that has been completed in the model stays completed. And there's a lot of features that do this. Because today we're going to be focusing on the training aspects, we're not going to get into these details, but you're more than welcome to check us out online to see some of those features. Some of the other features that we have is cleans your models. Anyone who's been using Revit long enough knows that the longer a project goes on, the more inconsistent standards come into your model, meaning that the ability to maintain your graphical and Revit standards and your quality becomes more difficult the longer and the bigger those projects become. So we have tools that will automatically align those non-conforming standards to your standards, ensuring, again, your graphical and your Revit quality is exactly as needed. The next is trainer teams. And this is where we're going to really be focusing today, is how Guardian, again, connects your users to your training resources right there in a moment. And lastly, as I mentioned there with the objectives, is these 360-degree insights, is understanding how effective is Guardian at helping your users be better at learning the use of Revit, learning your standards and best practices, and ensuring that your work that is completed stays completed. All right, Guardian was founded in 2018 and used worldwide by over 350 firms. So we're quite proud of the clients that we've developed over the years. And we really see when we work with clients, this really becomes a partnership, is we really pride ourselves in learning from our clients on what their problems are with their use of Revit and looking to find solutions to help them. So shifting gears here is, this webinar is really about how Guardian and Pinnacle is working together. And so on Pinnacle, you'll find the Guardian training resources. So within Pinnacle, we've got 3 learning paths: Guardian for Revit users, Guardian for project administrators, and Guardian for company administrators. And so within each of those, we have these individual courses. So as you can see, there's a lot of courses within Guardian, or courses within Pinnacle about Guardian. I actually just got off a call just before jumping on this call with a client, and they were just saying how easy Guardian is to get out to their teams and to train everyone, where they have a few hundred users, and they've spent maybe an hour going through the necessary training, the communications, to get them up and going with their use of Guardian. So Guardian is really simple for that end user. We try to actually minimize the involvement that end user has with Guardian. But we will show you here in later slides of how Guardian comes to the user versus the user coming to Guardian. And Mike, if you have anything to add here regarding Guardian on Pinnacle.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris. As Chris mentioned earlier, these are the learning paths and courses that are available inside a Pinnacle series. So what we want to do is we want to support you being able to apply Guardian to your projects and your everyday tasks that you're doing. So if you're having trouble finding these are just all located in the Guardian library inside of Pinnacle. If you're having any trouble, please reach out to your customer success manager. myself, Mike Ivanoff at eaglepoint.com, or Chad Close. He's also on this as well, Chad Close at eaglepoint.com. We would be happy to help you find these resources and be able to implement these resources in your training so you can go ahead and start working with Guardian. So thanks, Chris, for allowing us to plug that training a little bit.
And thanks for having me here. All right, when Mike and Chad and I all kind of came together to figure out what is this webinar really going to be about, you know, we were kind of given the opportunity from a Guardian perspective to be like, oh, we can just present Guardian, but we felt like really having a webinar that is helping you understand how Guardian and Pinnacle works together and really addressing the problems that your Revit users face on a regular basis. So it got us thinking about, and ultimately what Guardian is trying to do is help the users become better at their use of Revit. And what does Pinnacle do? Pinnacle provides the training that helps those users, right? So to better understand where those problems are, we kind of came to the conclusion is, what are the most accessed courses within Pinnacle? And that would kind of shine a light of saying, these are the areas that Revit users across Pinnacle's user base really see a need to learn more. And those are the areas that we should focus on in demonstrating how Guardian can connect users to those resources. So we got into a series of these. These were the top 6 Revit views, object display. These two kind of go hand in hand, but the issue with these, and really kind of everything within Revit, there's a million different ways to do all this. And there's only one right way depending on what your firm's processes and best practices are, or your project requirements. But then we get into things like project coordinates and levels and grids and Revit parameters and Revit walls. So we're going to be demonstrating how Guardian helps to educate those users in real time. And Chad, anything you would add to these most accessed training courses?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, these are the things that a lot of users either struggle with because there's not been enough training, or it's just such a complex. I mean, for example, Revit views. I mean, there's a million different ways. Well, there officially 33 different ways that you can have something hidden in a view, and you have no idea how to find it. And it comes back to basic understanding of how the phases work and how the work sets work and how the visibility graphic overrides work and how object styles work. And you need to have all those concepts, and then you need to know how they work together. So, you know, I think, again, Guardian will be a nice addition for many of these firms that can help take some of the heavy lifting off of all understanding all that complexity. So, and that's just one example. The others are other good examples of how Revit can be kind of complex for especially newer users.
Thanks for adding that, Chad. With that being said, why don't we hop over to Revit and actually talk about Revit views to start with. And Chad, I'm really excited that you brought up those 33 views. I always say if there are 33 ways to find hidden elements within Revit, then there are 33 ways to hide elements in Revit, right? And we've all been there before, especially as BIM managers and whatnot, where so we get the call and we're like, all right, we pull out our handy dandy cheat sheet and we're like, all right, 45 minutes in, it was like number 17 this time, we finally found it. Ultimately, what we're trying to accomplish with Guardian is we're really trying to prevent these mistakes or these issues from happening in the first place. So we're putting proactive controls into Revit that is completely customizable by the client on a firm by firm basis, a discipline by discipline, typology, even by a project by project basis. So with that being said, let's talk about Revit views. So I'm going to activate this view here, and I can see that we have a view template applied. As many of you know, that the view template in a well-structured project is the way that you should control your visibility for a given view. But people don't always understand that. Sometimes they want to go to visibility graphic overrides, they want to do hide elements in view and whatnot. And so let's take a look at that. So if I come in here to my view template and say, I just want to hide a certain element in here. If I come in here and turn that off and hit OK, Guardian will say, hey, are you sure that you want to make this change? And the idea here is to be able to communicate in real time what are the best practices around, in this case, managing view templates. But say if it's hiding elements in view, and we'll show this here in a second as well, and who's responsible for managing that aspect of the model. Now, as you can see here, is we're helping provide that guidance. We're also providing sort of recommended workflows associated with this. But we've taken it one step further here is with Guardian, we can put the direct link into the Pinnacle series right here. So by clicking there, and I'm going to have to sign in here, I'm taken directly to Pinnacle's resources, those online resources. So these individuals who may not even know what view templates are, they could be new to Revit. Now they can come in here and take these courses right within the moment. So if I click back over here to Revit, so this is sort of just one example of how Guardian helps kind of ensure the completed work stays completed because someone's already gone through and set up these view templates, but then these users are educated in real time. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. The other thing I want to show here when it comes to Revit views, and part of understanding Revit views is understanding organization of views. So you've all probably seen this, and I'm going to come over here to views, and I'm going to go to sheet, and I'm just going to create a new sheet. Let's go ahead, OK here. As you can see here on the left, this is what you typically see when a new sheet or view is created. Revit just categorizes these items in the view browser with the question marks. So what we've developed is something we call parameter prompts. So parameter prompts works for any instance parameter in the project, whether it's a system family, a loadable family. And what you're able to do here is you're able to prompt the user to input the data values associated with those instant parameters. So in this case, we're going to create a new sheet as part of the CD set. And then we can also do our sequence. We're going to make sure it's architecture. And we'll kind of keep the sheet number at 313. And now we can see that sheet's been created and it's been properly organized within the browser. The problem that we're really trying to solve with this particular one, take views and sheets, is typically people don't do this in real time. And then they go off to do other work. And they're like, oh, where did this view go? Where did this sheet go? And they're spending way too much time trying to find these simple, really organizational problems. So we've added that layer where you can kind of require users to be organized in real time. So shifting gears here is I want to come back to object display. Now we talked about the view templates and how those work. But what if we get in this little situation here? Another real world example is here we have this elevation callout. You can see it's not referenced, meaning these views have not been placed on sheets. So we've all seen this before, is you're getting into the waning days of a project deadline, and a senior reviewer puts the red lines or the red lines saying hide or delete or remove this call out because it's not being referenced. And so the junior person, relatively new to Revit, comes in here and is like, well, maybe what I'll do is maybe I will use my hide elements in view. So they come up here and say hide elements. Oh. Sometimes this is what happens in live demonstration. We're supposed to get a little dialogue there and didn't happen, but we'll give this a shot again. So let's flip this on its head here. So Yeah, this is Guardian's sync traffic control. It's reminding me sync. You can see it's been a while since I synced, so I'm actually going to snooze this. So everyone knows that the way that you should be in unreferenced views, you kind of leave them go, because when you hit print, you want to make sure that the unreferenced views is deselected in the print dialog. Now, what if someone's like, well, actually, I want to delete these views? And all right, let's, this is the sometimes live demos here. Let's go ahead and double check things here. So here what we're getting into is we're actually getting into the settings within Guardian. So as you can see here, we have all these rules. And so here, if we come down here to hiding in view rules, we can see we have a rule here called view callouts. And if we edit this rule, so anytime Guardian recognizes a view callout is selected to be hidden in view, they will get what's called a command message. And so what we expected to see there was this message that would pop up and says, we can see that you're using hide elements in view. And as you can see here with the recommended workflows, hide unreferenced views in the print settings dialog was that first recommendation. So you're not having people who are hiding them when all they need to do is turn them off. Then we went to reference deleting them, because ultimately you don't want them to delete them, because ultimately they will be deleting the view that's associated with that. So as you can see here, we do have rules here that will prevent views and other elements from being deleted. So what I'm going to do here is the other item, the next one on our list there was project coordinates. So let's go ahead and deactivate the view. And I'm just going to double check an item here. Okay. And so if I come over here to, so manage, coming back to views. And I've seen this happen in the real world numerous times, where you may have a view, a lot of times it might be a call out in which the rotation of that call out isn't properly placed on the sheet. And so again, hate to pick on the junior designers, who this might be their first Revit project, but a lot of times this is where a lot of this starts, is that they're again given a sheet of red lines and they're said, hey, pick this up. And they've got a call out here that says, rotate this view so it's in the orientation of the building relative to it. And all they're looking at is their sheet. And they just know that view needs to be rotated. So what they typically do is if they come over to your position, actually, let's go to a model view here. If they come over to their position, they're like, all right, well, there's all these rotate true north, rotate project north, and if I start messing around with those, I can see what happens. So as you can see, when I go click rotate project, is Guardian steps in and says, are you really sure that you want to rotate project, right? And this will prevent that accidental mistake, because if traditionally without Guardian, that user will rotate that view and they're like, my view works. And they don't realize what they just did was rotated the entire project and everyone else's view. And they go home from the day, and everyone comes in the next day and like, what happened, right? So again, what we're trying to do is prevent those mistakes, but educate users in the proper way of how they can help themselves and learn more about Revit. So here again, you click on the link, you're taken to Pinnacle, and those users are connected to those learning resources. So with that being said, just want to pause. If there are any questions or comments, feel free to weigh in as we go along. The other item here, going down our list, is Revit levels and grids. Again, so many of these things, as Chad was alluding to earlier, there's just layers and layers of ways in which Revit works, and understanding how the graphic display of one thing that is annotation versus it being a modeled element, it creates these layers that takes, frankly, years for someone to really understand within Revit. And so most users don't have that amount of time. Let's come to a situation here where we have this level here. Again, we can see in this particular floor plan, it doesn't look like this level is, excuse me, I'm saying levels, but I mean grids here, is with grids, it looks like this isn't properly placed. It looks like it should be deleted. But what if there is actually a cantilever above and we don't see that in this view? And again, someone gets the red line that says remove this grid. Now, if I go to remove this, I can see that there's a pin that's been applied. So I can't do anything with it. I can't move it. I can't delete it until I remove that pin. So if I remove that pin, here you can see Guardian kicking in. We have a feature called protected pins. This is the ability to, wherever the pin feature within Revit is available, you're able to add that level of protection on top of that. So as you can see, we've been warned that the grid line has been pin protected, and say, you know, I need to delete this grid. Now, many of you who know Revit would be like, no, you shouldn't be deleting it because it's being used above. So let's actually delete this. And here again, Guardian kicks in. As I demonstrated earlier, there's actually a delete protection assigned specifically for levels and grids. So this is how Guardian can help prevent these mistakes from happening. Over the years, I've seen so many times where a grid or a level has been accidentally moved, or a link to model has been moved, and it's been hundreds of hours spent by the project team to resolve these problems. I've seen deadlines missed because of accidental movements. Or again, one doesn't understand, like, you can't delete grids if you're not trying to show it on this view, but it's relevant in another view. Or any other modeled elements, not understanding how modeled elements show up in all views. And this is where you need your visibility controls to actually manage how things are displayed versus using a simple delete button that you may do in CAD. So as you can see, there's layers and layers of protections that Guardian helps provide, but again, educating users and connecting them to the learning resources. Now, the last thing, since we just have a few minutes here, that I want to highlight is what I've really demonstrated here is all the ways that users tend to make mistakes in Revit. One of the features that we have is something we call all commands. So if I come back over here to project configurations and go to user commands, out of the box, Guardian has a whole list of what we call user commands that you're able to provide a monitor, guide, and prevent protection mode. So monitor, Guardian's just registering all this stuff is happening. Guide is what we've been seeing, except for the one when it comes to the delete protections, and that was set to prevent. And a prevent is actually a password protected command, meaning that user is not able to continue that command until they enter the required password. What we find is, of the hundreds of commands, most firms only have maybe a handful, maybe a dozen commands set to prevent. And these are things like explode CAD files or relocate project and stuff like that. The things that really it is the BIM manager's responsibility to do if it's necessary. But what I want to highlight now is, what about your typical modeling commands? So say for a wall, for instance, we have the ability to create your own custom commands based off all the API available Revit commands or postable commands. So if I type in walls, and if I say architecture wall, and I'm going to say command name, command walls, and then message title, learn more about walls. And as you can see, we can do all this, and I can create a default message. And I'm just going to copy and paste this over. So this is a great way when users go to execute a wall, is a great way to communicate your content, your best practices that's associated with your firm. So now that I've added this here, I'm going to go ahead and OK here. And then I'm going to add it from walls over here. And actually, we did this twice. So I'm going to add this here. And I'm going to put a guide over here because I want to educate our users in real time. I'm going to hit OK. And now when I go to create a wall, we have I'm going to exit the command. We have our parameter prompts there. Again, I apologize. It might be because we actually have the duplicates here, so I may have to clean that up. Oops. Let's come back over here and let's type this up. So we have, let's delete this one here. Okay. And let's come back over here. Let's try this again. Add it to here, hit OK. This is parameter prompts that you can assign to walls. And now I exit command. And these, again, sometimes real-time presenting doesn't always work when you're trying to do it. But anyways, kind of get the point here where the user would get oh, I know why, because we didn't actually set it to protection mode. So we need to come in here, set this to guide. The other thing I want to highlight here, you may be thinking, well, do we really want to remind the users every single time? So we can come in here and set the frequency and do once per session and allow the user to edit. You can even allow never as a selection. So your more advanced users can actually select never. So let's try this again. So we get our parameter prompts. Let's exit out of here. And I apologize, it didn't quite work the way that I anticipated. And so again, the goal here is to be able to connect your users in real time with those learning resources to talk about your particular best practices and whatnot, and to link them to your online learning resources for things like Pinnacle. With that being said, I want to switch back over here quickly and talk about the 360-degree insights that Guardian provides. We do have something we call Project Central. So this is a real-time dashboard within Revit that most users will put this on a separate screen so they can see what's happening in real time. As you can see here along the bottom, this gives you data about when users are executing those protected commands. So this gives administrators the ability to see this in real time, and if they see something that happens that needs to be resolved, they're able to get in here quickly. In addition, we provide something called Guardian Backstage. This is all of your data about how Guardian is working in real time. So here is what we call the commands all. This is a dashboard within the Power BI template that is provided, and it shows you your most frequently used protected commands. So this gives you an opportunity to understand how frequently a particular command is being utilized. And as you can see here, we have this canceled and processed. Canceled means is how many times has that user canceled out of that command once they receive the command message. So this is demonstrating how Guardian is able to educate and then validate that your training that you're providing to them is actually being adhered to. So a lot of great tools to ensure that your models remain protected and your content is cleaned, and lastly, your users are trained in real time. So this gives you a real good ability to make sure that everyone on your teams is really kind of rowing in the same direction and learning as they go along. So with that being said, I'd like to hand it back over to Mike and Chad.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris, for a fantastic presentation. I can actually say I'm not a BIM manager. I'm not somebody who's a Revit user, but I learned quite a bit today. So thank you. Now, I'm going to give a couple more seconds if anybody has any questions. There's nothing loaded in there right now, so we're going to end pretty much on time, pretty close to time, unless there happens to be another question, and I'm not seeing anything come through, and that's totally fine. But I'd also like to say that if you do have any questions afterwards, just let us know, and we're here always to support you. So thank you, everybody, for your attention today. Again, thank you so much, Chris, for your presentation, and everybody have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chad.